So in our previous sessions, we have already discussed sage Mahidasa Aitareya. Whatever we know about him, we know very little, as we saw. His teachings, known as the Aranyakas, the sections of the Vedas that are to be studied in the forests, because they are meditative, contemplative in nature. There is even in Thai Buddhism, Myanmar, there is this forest tradition of Vipassana. Because it is ought to be practiced in the forests. So in the same way, the Aranyaka sections, they are called as such because they are studied and taught in the Aranyaka, in the forests. In our last session, I also delved a little bit into the practices that were described in these Aranyaka texts. But when it comes, so we know a lot about Maharshi Aitareya's teaching, the seer of the next mantra that we are going to study, but we know very little about his personality. My master used to say one thing, that the less we know about the masters, the more we can benefit from them. He used to give the example that a master is beneficial, but like fire and water. Get too close, you have to be prepared to be burnt. Get too far away, then you don't benefit. So you have to keep a safe distance. The same is true about water. If you jump into it and you don't know how to swim. That's what he used to say. In any case, the masters of the Upanishads, they don't tell anything about themselves. Even their names are not attached to the text themselves. It is later traditions who have preserved that this part of the Vedas belongs to this and this master. One of the reasons is, on the other hand, for example, we know so much about the Buddha, we know quite a lot more about the lives of, for example, the Jaina Tirthankaras, the Jaina masters, but why do we know so little about the Vedic masters? First of all, they are quite in a huge number. For example, just the Rig Veda itself, the most ancient section of the Veda, has at least 402 names are given. And some of these names are collective names. They are not special names, but they are names of a group of people which could have up to 1,000 practitioners, 1,000 saints and sages. So it goes into thousands. And first of all, because the Vedas are a collection of such a big number of authors, so it's very difficult to retain all the information about their personal lives unless there is something very important and outstanding in their life which is of some benefit for the students, for for the future generations, then of course. Otherwise, the personality of the master matters little, and what matters is their teachings. And that is the reason that, at least in the Vedic traditions, no, what I sometimes call, I don't know if it's the correct word, but no personality cult, if that's the correct word, personality cult, ever evolved in the Vedic traditions. In fact, the moment a personality cult evolved around a Vedic tradition and a group started to be too much committed to one individual, saying that, okay, we accept now his teachings only as the supreme authority, a time came when it started becoming problematic for the rest, and then they had to move out, sort of, from the mainstream. This is what happens, for example, with the Buddha. Very clearly, we see this because everything started revolving around him. Only what he taught was considered the greatest, the supreme authority. Anyone else's views were completely rejected. There were several reasons, but this was one of the reasons. And somehow, to a great extent, I often suspect that the same thing happened to Kapila. The same thing happened to Kapila and his followers. Again, it is very difficult for me to put it in words, because on one side you find in Shvetashvatara Upanishad, which is an Upanishad, paying deep respect to sage Kapila, but then when you look at how the stream of his teachings evolved, and they were deeply influential in nature, and of course they were these two streams. One was the atheistic stream, non-theistic stream, and one was the theistic stream. And the theistic stream is again very influential on, for example, on the Bhagavad Gita, on so many different texts. But a time came when again Vedanta, for example, Shankaracharya in the 8th century, what he did, and even before Shankaracharya in the 4th century, what Badarayana in the form of Brahma Sutra did. In Brahma Sutra, which is today one of the 3 most important texts of the Vedic traditions, together with the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutra, which really systematically presents the philosophy of the Upanishads. There the chief opponent is Kapila's Sankhya doctrine, and their views which were clashing with the views of the multiple masters. So what happened after that is that Kapila, once again, we deeply respect him. He is one of the 24 incarnations. His yoga was complete. In fact, Vedanta is nothing but an updated version of the theistic stream of Kapila Sankhya. Simply an updated version. A few ideas that seemed problematic from the Upanishadic perspective, what seemed problematic from a logical perspective, were updated and was transformed into what we call today as Vedanta. And in fact, Vedanta has no problem to be identified as Sankhya. In the context of Vedanta, Vedanta is Sankhya and Sankhya is Vedanta. But it was simply that specific view which evolved completely around the personality of Kapila, which was sort of again the stream with Shankaracharya when he reinvigorated the spirit of multiplicity. And he was deeply influential because afterwards, whether people again also diverted from him. Ramanujacharya diverted from him. So many different masters diverted from him. So no one in the Vedic tradition has supreme authority. It's more like a collective voice, I would say, though it's a modern concept, but democratic in nature, where everybody says what they feel, what they experience, and therefore it can get, I must warn you, that it can get confusing, because you will find opposing views in the Upanishads themselves. One master saying this and one master saying this. Maybe one master is criticizing this view, but still this view is present. So then, I like it because after listening to all these suggestions, ultimately we are left on our own with the inner timeless master, the master of all the ancient masters that Patanjali speaks of, Sapurvesham api guru kalena navachedat, the timeless master who is the master of even the most ancient masters, because that master is the only master that is truly limited, truly not limited by time. And I think like a master is limited by time, to a great extent, yes, every master has a timeless essence to their teachings, but the words that they use, the concepts that they use, through which they present that timeless essence, the words that they use, the concepts that they use, they have a limitation. They have a limitation, and at some point one has to move forward after grasping the essence. So this really inspires us to draw out the quintessence, as the Upanishads say, and throw away the rest as the chaff, and move ahead on our practical journey with that. And I think in the Vedas, this in the most ancient sections, it has been laid down so emphatically that after all I have told this story a few times, let me repeat it again because it's a beautiful story, that after all the rishis, all the seers, they had left the face of the earth, and no one was, rishi means the seer, a seer of the Veda. So when no one was left behind, then humanity felt that we are in darkness. That is what we feel when our masters, when our teachers, at some point they have to pass away. They have to leave this planet Earth like all of us do. And when they leave, then we feel as if we are left in darkness behind them in their absence. But then humanity goes to the Creator and says that you have called back all the rishis, all the great sages, all the great masters. We are left completely in darkness. Send more rishis to guide us. And then Brahma, that creator principle of the divine, he says that, don't worry, I have left us an eternal seer with each one of you, which is your intellect, your rational capacity to analyze and understand the truth. That is a rishi, that is an eternal rishi which I have left amongst you. Follow that. You will never go astray. So that is where ultimately I think the teachings of these rishis have to lead us towards that rishi within ourselves. And I have a feeling, just this is my feeling, this is how I feel, that the moment a personality cult develops, then we have to be so deeply committed to that person's views, that commitment to the inner rishi, somehow we have to choose my experience or that person's experience. If that person's experience is the supreme authority, then I don't know, the line is maybe very fine, but on the other hand, multiplicity, where different views are there, then you can always find that, okay, if your experience is different, still you find that, okay, there was a master who had this experience also, because you have multiplicity. And the view which becomes most meaningful to a lot of people, that becomes then the most influential view. That is how things work in democracy. So, as the masters say, that someone who does not have their own intellect, of what use these scriptures, these texts, these teachings will be for them? It is like a mirror is of no use for someone who is blind. You can use the mirror to see hidden parts of yourselves. You can use it if we make mistakes in our asana posture. The mirror is a wonderful teacher. It tells us where the mistake is. But for that we have to look at it. We have to have our eyes open. If we practice in front of a mirror with our eyes closed, it cannot teach us anything. It will fail to teach us anything. The same is true. So where this leads to is basically that blind following is what all the time is discouraged in the Vedic tradition. Listen, draw the quintessence, critically analyze it, and then work hard to experience it through yoga and accept it then. And if your experience is different, then share it. Share it with everybody. And let's see how many people can relate with that, how many people can follow that. So it's a view of multiplicity rather than saying that, okay, whatever Jesus Christ said, that is the only truth, or what Prophet Muhammad said is the only truth, or what the Buddha said is the only truth. Jesus Christ said was the truth, was true. Prophet Muhammad also spoke from his experience. He meditated in a cave for months and months together, so he certainly had deeper experiences, and there is so much that can be learned from there as well. Similarly from the Buddha. So then comes universal acceptance. Then we become ready also to learn from the Sufi traditions. We become open to learn from the Buddhist meditative traditions, because when it comes, for example, to the practice of meditation, the deeper practical steps of meditation, I think no one in human history has gone as deep as the Buddha himself. So in that, when we want to explore the intricacies of meditation and the practical steps of meditation, then it is Buddha. If we want to explore the tapas, which means austerity, non-violence to the extreme, to the greatest possible depth, then we have to explore Jainism. So like this, every tradition has something beautiful, specific, special to it, which, depending on our interest, if we want to explore the intricacies of that particular aspect, then we should. And I think this is again what I see as the universal approach of the Vedic traditions. That is why Kapila is deeply respected. The Buddha is deeply respected as one of the 24 incarnations. Rishabhadeva, the founder of the Jaina traditions, is deeply respected. Again, as an incarnation of the same supreme principle. Like Rama, like Krishna, from a Hindu viewpoint, neither Rama is a supreme authority, neither Krishna is a supreme authority. Like they are incarnations of the same divine, in the same way, the Buddha, Rishabhadeva, Kapila, they were all, what Kapila gave us is Ashtanga Yoga, the eight-limbed path of yoga, which originates in Kapila's teachings. That is something unique. Nobody else gave that. But if Einstein was completely correct in most of the things, never means that he would have been completely correct in 100%. And that's why, for example, when it came to quantum mechanics, his views were such that later on we realized that he never truly accepted it, because that was his limitation. So in the same way, every master does have some limitation, but the moment a personality cult develops around a particular figure, someone becomes the one, the only one, then we start to stick even to their limitations. Because then that personality cult is threatened if that limitations come to the forefront. And so then the followers try everything to hide it or to rationalize it or to be whatever, committed, to remain committed even in the face of absurdness or whatever may happen. So, but again, focusing on one is a different thing. So if, for example, for the study of yoga, if we completely focus only on Patanjali, that is completely fine. That's a different thing. Because when we want to focus on something, we have to choose. So this doesn't mean that the Vedic traditions are saying that we just have to follow everyone. No. When we focus on one, then we focus on one. That is the idea of Ishtadeva, that the Vedic traditions respect all the different forms of divinities, but when it comes to worship, then of course you have to choose one, and you have to be with that, and you have to follow that for the practical purpose. But simply the idea is that all should be respected. No one should be rejected. No one should be dismissed. So that is why the Vedic rishis, they never, I think they would have, they knew that if they would give too much information about their personality, then usually it starts creating that. But as masters, they did not want to do this. So now, let us study his teaching and pronounce it. The mantra, the seventh mantra. Om Vang Me Manasi pratiṣṭhitā mano me vāci pratiṣṭhitam aviravir maedhi vedasya ma ani sthaha shrutam mema prahasir anena adhitena ahoratran sandadhami ritam vadishyami satyam vadishyami tanmam avatu tadvaktaram avatu avatu mam avatu vaktaram avatu vaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti
Shanti.
Om Vāng me manasi pratiṣṭhitā, mano me vāci pratiṣṭhitam, āvirāvirma edhi vedasya ma'ānīsthaha, shrutam me mā prahāsīranena dhītena horatrānt sandadhāmi, ritam vadishyāmi, satyam vadishyāmi, tanmāmavatu tadvakta ramavatu, avatu mam avatu vaktaram. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us read the translation and then we will discuss the mantra. Om, my speech is established in my mind. My mind is established in my speech. O the evident one, become manifest for me by removing the veil of ignorance. O speech and mind, be the ones that bring wisdom to me. May that I have heard not leave me. By this that has been studied, I merge day and night. I shall speak the universal truth. I shall speak the truth. May that protect me. May that protect the speaker. May that protect me. May that protect the speaker. May that protect the speaker. Om, peace, peace, peace. This is the literal meaning of this mantra. My speech is established in my mind and my mind is established in my speech. This much is the first section which speaks about the relationship between speech and mind. So let us discuss first this. When you read the English translation, does it make just this much? Does it make any sense to you? And if it does, then how do you understand? Just my speech is established in my mind. How do you, when you read it, what does it tell you? Any thoughts?
Whatever we speak first comes in the mind when we decide what we have to speak. Then whatever we speak comes.
So
Speech is determined in mind first.
Speech is determined by the mind first, and then we speak. Any other? Honesty.
Because sometimes you think in this way but speak differently. But I feel this sentence gives me the feeling very honest.
Yes. Any other thoughts? What we say is a reflection of our thinking. As long as we are, as she said, honestly, it should be.
This could be mental speech too, not just verbal speech, but like mental chatter, right?
Yes. Any other thoughts?
I was also just thinking, because normally when an idea comes, we just react. So that we really let that speech, really be established in the mind, thinking several times from all angles.
That's exactly, yes.
So it's not just what we say, but it's also how we say it. That is a determinant of the quality of our minds.
Yes. I have this quotation, I've written it down, I don't remember it. If your lips would keep from slips, 5 things observe with care, of what you speak, to whom you speak, and how, and when, and where. It's a beautiful saying, and I think we all fail again and again on this, specifically when we establish this contact through speech, because this is really, speech is an extremely important faculty, because through this we are constantly in contact with everyone around us. So ultimately, friction or problems or everything arises out of communication, out of how things are communicated. And as none of us is truly a master, so we make mistakes and frictions do happen. The establishment of mind in speech, the example that comes to my mind straight away is what happened in my last class. For example, when I translated Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, lead me from darkness into light, I mistranslated it as lead me from light into darkness. And when I said it, I didn't realize it. I completely did not realize it till at the end of the class. Anjali, she came forward from Pune and she said, I hope you meant from darkness to light. And I said, did I say that? Did I really say that? And then she said, yes, yes. So that's what happens when the mind wanders away, when the mind is not established in our speech. Speech starts saying something very different than what we want to convey. So obviously I wanted to convey that lead me. That's the translation. That's what I wanted to say. No one on earth would want from light to go into darkness, from knowledge to ignorance.
I think maybe I would disagree with that, because I think where a seed grows is in darkness, so sometimes we have to go.
Sorry?
Sometimes going from light into darkness is necessary,
Mm-hmm.
so that there can be transformation and rebirth, because where does a seed grow? It grows in the darkness.
It grows in the darkness, and yet it grows towards light. From so yes, yes. And of course, if we have not experienced darkness, then we cannot value light. That is also there, and both ways of looking at it. So you would say that it wasn't a mistake on that day. Okay, thank you.
But
The translation was wrong. The translation was wrong. The translation was wrong. Yes. Still, I have one person on my side, even if I made a mistake. Yes. So that's what happens when our mind leaves us. So the first thing, I think this teaching has an ethical dimension to it, as I think you pointed out, that it can be understood as saying that I say what I think, and I think what I say. That would be a translation of this, because a liar by definition is someone who says something different from what he thinks and what he believes to be true. If what he says might not be true, but he believes it to be true, then at least you cannot call that person a liar. Because whatever he's saying, he has said it in good faith. So he's not a liar. What he believes to be the truth, he said it. Whether it turns out the truth or not, that's a different thing. But at least you cannot. So, for example, even a lie detector, it catches this discrepancy between speech and thoughts by looking at the reactions that the body gives. So if the person internally knows that he is lying, he's not saying what he actually believes to be true, then it can catch it. But if a person is saying it in complete faith, then of course no lie detector can catch that person's lie. So that is one thing, and that's why one of the definitions of Mahatma. Mahatma is a beautiful word. It's a very ancient word. The Upanishads use it. Oh. Mahatma. Here the word Atman simply means heart. So the one with a big heart. That's what it means. Mahatma. It's a very ancient word, and we still use it today. For example, Gandhiji is referred to as Mahatma Gandhi, the great-hearted Gandhi. And I think the closest we can get in English language is magnanimous. Would be quite close to, because anima and that life principle, and magna, the big, the one. I think it originates from the Aristotelian concept of megalopsychos, the one with a great psyche, a great mind. He uses this word in his teachings, in his writings on ethics. Megalopsychos. It's very, in fact, a literal translation into Greek. Yes.
So are you saying is it more related to generosity, or is it related to the greatness of the person, or is it great thoughts of the person?
Everything included, because when we have said the heart, hridaya, in the yogic definition, includes the intellect as well. So it includes, that's why earlier in one of my earlier classes I said that to translate chitta in Patanjali's teachings simply as mind content is a very limiting translation, because the mind for Patanjali is not up here only, but it is what is happening here. So it's this whole, so a better translation would be mind, mental, emotional content. All our feelings also have to be attached to it. So when the word hridaya, for example, when Shankaracharya explains hridaya, then it's the union of our feelings, because we feel here. That is where we feel all our love and our feelings, even when fear, or we feel it in this region. At least subjective feeling is like this, because our heart reacts to certain feelings, and these reactions we understand, we relate them to our feelings. So we feel it here. And so one of the definitions that has been given to a Mahatma is someone who has the same in his thoughts, in his words, and in his deeds. Manasyekam, the same in his mind. Manasyekam, vachasyekam, same in his thoughts. Karmanyekam, and same in his actions. Mahatmanam. They are Mahatmas. And manasyanyat, something else in his thoughts. Vachasyanyat, something else in his words. And then karmanyanyat, and something else in his actions. That is duratmanam. Those, the ones who have a bad heart, bad intention. They will say sweet things, but when it comes to doing, or when internally they might have tremendous hatred. When they do something, then they harm, but in speech they will be sweet. Just that's called flattery. So that would be a duratman. That is how. So Mahatman, so it has this ethical aspect to it about truthfulness, this part of the mantra, and also mindfulness. as I said, that sometimes when we are not mindful of what we are saying, then if the mind is not present in our speech, then slips happen and we say something else. We make mistakes, even if the intention was not there. And sometimes the ignorance is such tremendous that we don't even realize that we have made the mistake unless someone else makes us aware of it. That is the amount of ignorance that we have to deal with. But this makes us aware of. And ultimately this brings us back to the idea of being a human from as per the definition of the Sanskrit word of human, because it's a beautiful word. These are all great ideals that at least we can try to follow. The definition of, this is the Sanskrit word for human, manushya. Manushya simply means, and somehow it has the same root which most of the Indo-European words for human have. Even human has that man in it. Man has that man root in it. Woman has that man in it. Manushya, manava, other Sanskrit words like manava have the same man. And man means someone who thinks, someone who has the capacity to think. And therefore, the very definition of manushya is someone who acts after thinking. Matva sivyati karmani. Who is not driven merely by instincts, merely because a thought comes up and he just does it, but he can think about the consequences and like this improve their conduct. Yes, we all make mistakes, but by acknowledging these mistakes and an honest attempt to become better, we improve. The Sanskrit word for barbarians is the same. Barbara is the Sanskrit word for it. So manushya, civilized human being, and barbara, barbarian. The definition of barbarian is slightly different in Sanskrit. It's not a particular race. It is simply someone who realizes after it has happened. We are all barbarians. So that is self-analysis. We all make mistakes, realize it. So we have to move away from being barbarians into becoming human beings. There's a beautiful saying that a king sees through his ears, wise people see through their intellect, animals see through their nose because they smell everything. Even I see the monkey, you give them a food, something to eat, they will first smell it and then eat it. Most animals, cows, dogs, cats, they smell. They will first smell it and then we look at things but they smell. And if they feel fine, then they take it. And Barbara, the barbarian ones, they see it only when it has happened. When the result is in front of them. All the life, smoking, it's fine, perfectly. Nothing matters. They don't even look at all the warnings that are there. All the gruesome pictures that are there on the packet of the cigarette. Who cares? But then when it comes really in front of them, that is when then the suffering starts, and that's when they realize. Then they say, okay, now it's too late. It won't change anything anyway. So life is too short. So that is the difference between barbarian and manushya. So this teaching has an ethical dimension to it. But more importantly, it has a spiritual dimension which is required by the context, because as I said when I spoke of the context of this mantra in my previous sessions, that it comes straight away after the quintessential teaching of the Rig Veda. Prajnanam Brahma, the consciousness that I have discovered within myself, that pure consciousness within myself is one and the same with the consciousness of this universe residing within the hearts of all beings. Now, this can just be said. Prajnanam Brahma. People say there are four Mahavakyas, quintessential sentences. Consciousness is Brahman. The self within me is Brahman. You are Brahman. I am Brahman. 4 quintessential sentences, that's all. They are extremely small. But there are books titled You Are That. Aldous Huxley's work on the perennial philosophy, the first chapter is Thou Art That. And I think one of the works that really made this Mahavakya, this quintessential sentence from the Samaveda, world famous. And everybody speaks of it. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Mansur al-Hallaj declared, Anal Haq, I am that supreme truth. It is easy to repeat these words. The question that Aitareya, after putting this tiny little quintessential sentence, his worry is our mind established in that sentence or not? That's his biggest worry. Are we saying it with understanding or not? Are we saying it from experience or not? Or are we just parroting out because Aitareya said it, or because the Vedas have said it? Then the masters would say that we have lost the game. The moment we have accepted the quintessential teaching out of faith, because the masters have said it, we have lost it. We have to engage it. If it doesn't make sense, then we have to ask questions. We have to ask why it doesn't make sense. And it is through this criticism, to this constant criticism and engagement, and even after it starts making sense rationally, why I don't experience like that? What should I do to experience it? What can I do? And that is when we test ourselves against this standard. That, okay, this is the quintessential sentence, but it doesn't make sense to me. How can this consciousness within me be one with the universe? This completely doesn't make sense to me. Then, first of all, critical analysis starts. And then, even after logically it starts making sense, even then, is it my experience, or have I just understood it logically and accepted it because it makes sense logically? Or have I really experienced it? Till it comes completely from experience, one should not rest. And this is why he is straight away after he declares Prajnanam Brahma, he speaks of this Śānti Mantra. So we'll come back to this discussion again from this perspective, because somehow, even before we go to these higher levels of wisdom, what are considered very lower levels, the levels of ritualism, are all about bringing this unity between speech and thought. They work so much on bringing unity between what we pronounce, what we do through all our senses of action, which means by our hands specifically, and we have these two very, very powerful tools, our hands and our speech. These two are the most powerful hands. And the whole idea of Vedic ritualism, to a very great extent, the way the idea has been developed, is in fact to unite these two together. Our senses of action, particularly these two, our hand and our speech, with our intellect, so that there is no, disparity, or you can say disconnect, or that big, there is this, separation. Yeah. Between, complete separation between that, that can we, gaddha, chasm, yes. Chasm between these two, to bring a bridge between these two. And this is something that I will discuss in my next section. But here we really come to the origin of yoga, because one of the most ancient usage of the word yoga is seen in this context in the Rig Veda, Sadhinam Yogam Invati. The Lord of Light loves the yoga, the union of dhi. And dhi today in modern Hindi, dhi means intellect. But in Vedic Sanskrit, dhi means both action and intellect. So what he is saying here, Madhuchanda, the Rishi, an extremely ancient Rishi, he says that the Lord of Light loves the union, the yoga of action and intellect, mind, thought. So this is really very, very foundational to the whole system of Vedic practices. And of course,
of mind, action and thought.
Action and thought. Action and thought. Action and thought. That is where the word, this is, because in the same text, now Rig Veda is the most ancient text. So in the same text, otherwise yoga is mostly used in the sense of yogakshema. You know, the acquisition of something new. So it's always in the sense of acquisition of something new. So it doesn't have that deeper significance which the Upanishads give to it, which is reflected in Patanjali's teachings. It is only this one mantra in the whole 10,500 mantras of that era that the word yoga has been used by Madhuchanda in the context of the mind, the unification of the mind with one's actions. So it's a very foundational idea to yoga, to the whole Vedic tradition. And we'll discuss this a little bit more to see. Because vāc here, even though he's speaking of speech, and because he's teaching, so he is Pradyanam Brahma is a teaching. So he's very much concerned with the unification of speech and mind, but the commentators make it clear that speech is just one faculty of one sense of action. This stands for all the sense of actions. This is just a representative of all sense of actions. So what he wants with this one sense of action should be applied to all others, to all other sense of action as well. So come back to this discussion again. Any questions? Any thoughts? Yes.
Some sections practice something called like a Mauna Vrata. So is it basically the idea is it to keep the mind and speech?
This is precisely what I'm going to speak, because we will see that in ancient times the rituals were, because you might know that we used to have ritvik. Have you heard that word? Ritvik. And amongst these ritvik, there used to be 16 ritviks from each Vedas, and there used to be one Brahma. All the ritviks used to pronounce the Vedas and recite the Vedas. Brahma had to sit there, and he was the greatest authority, because these ritviks knew only one particular sections of the Vedas. One Ritvik, Hotri for example, was of Rig Veda, Adhvaryu was of Yajur Veda, Udgata was of Sama Veda. So they were specific. But Brahma used to be the one who he used to be Chaturvedi. In fact, Chaturvedi comes from the concept of others Dvivedi, Trivedi, they are the other ones who have just studied one Veda, two Veda, three Vedas. But he used to be the only Chaturvedi, and he was not allowed to say a single word. Because if all of them were busy in recitation and the ritual, the practical ritual, he was doing that in complete contemplation and meditation. And he was the most important one. Others were giving their strength to the ritual through words, through deeds. He through complete silence. So this is how rituals evolved. So mauna comes from there. The whole idea of mauna comes from there. And of course that mauna is from muni, contemplation. Mauna doesn't even mean silence. It is an effect. Silence is an effect. Otherwise in Sanskrit we have another word for silence, vācam yama. The yama of vāk. Vāk means speech. So yama, the control of speech. That is the Sanskrit word for silence. But nobody knows this word. We use the word mauna. Mauna simply means contemplation. That's it. Chaturvedi. Today it has become a surname. All they know, hopefully, is the names of the four Vedas. But you might find Chaturvedis who even don't know the names of the four Vedas. Today, the things have gone so bad. But so this is the basic concept of yajna. So when we say, for example, yoga yajna, because Krishna refers to yoga also as yajna, pranayama as a yajna. So what does he mean? It is all these thoughts have to be brought into. Then our pranayama becomes a yajna. Then our yoga becomes a yajna. Then it becomes a what? Yajna means worship or whatever you want to call it. Then it becomes a worship. Yes?
Did you mention something about the reincarnations of the divine? I don't know if I get it, but you mentioned Kapila, Jesus Christ, Buddha.
Yes.
So how's the relation from where they all come from?
The word is avatara. Avatara means descend. Avatara simply means descend. It can be understood as someone into whom that universal consciousness has descended. And the position of the masters is that such incarnations are endless in number. There is no specific number to them. But for the sake of worship, for the sake of respect, the masters have listed 24. And even out of these 24, 10 are the most important one, which are central. All the 24 are central, but 10 you will see as images, statues, pictures all around India in different ashrams. The Dashavataras, the 10 avatars, the 10 incarnations. Yes. Yes, as I said, that it also includes Jainism. It includes Jaina masters, it includes Buddha. Buddha is included in the 10 avatars. Rishabhadeva was not included in 10 avatars, but Rishabhadeva is still included in the 24 avatars. So, like this there are. But again, this was a list created approximately in the 10th century, 1000 years ago. The list starts by stating that avatara hyasankheyaha harehe sattva, the divine can have and has countless avatars, countless incarnations. It is like Nali ko kya kehte hain? What's Nali in English? But not this dirty Nali. The one that you have in the fields, Yeah. So you have one reservoir of water, and then you have these different canals. Canals. And to the different areas to irrigate them. To irrigation canal. to irrigate them. So the divine to irrigate different people in different time, like the same water of the same reservoir, goes through different canals, into different, as different streams, into different parts of the earth to irrigate it. In the same way, that divine consciousness chooses different canals. And these canals can be endless in number. But in the Indian traditions, these 24 have been the most influential ones, and that's why each one of them has given something very specific and unique to the spirituality of India, and that's why these 24 have been selected specifically out of countless of avatars. So, in the 10th century. So that is the standard number. Again, out of these 24, Jayadeva, he selected 10. So the 10 avatars. One of them is a fish, boar, Narasimha, all the different avatars. Because that is related to the similar story which we have in the Vedic traditions to the story of Noah, who is Manu in the Vedic traditions, and he is helped by a fish in the great deluge. Because all the ancient cultures have this story of the great deluge. I think it is of Babylonian origin. So like this. Yes. Okay, so let us... Yes? Okay.
You said to speak from the spirits, and she's asking, when you speak from our experience is involved in also in all that we have lived, and also negative samskaras.
Yes.
So how can it be a pure truth if it also has all this negativity?
Yeah. I think the beautiful story of Samudra Manthana. Have you ever gone to? Has anybody gone to Thailand and seen that? It's on the Suvarnabhumi airport. It depicts that great mythological story of Mandarachala mountain being used to churn the ocean of existence. On one side are the demons, and on one side are the gods. And both of them, the kurma, the turtle that you spoke of, is supporting the Mandarachala from below so that it doesn't sink into the ocean. And that is how both sides are churning the ocean of existence. And as a result of this churning, great gems come out of it. Also, Visha, which means the most deadly venom also comes out of it, and ultimately nectar comes out of it. That is the story. So I think this story resembles deeply the practice of meditation, in which we have to churn this ocean of existence within ourselves with the help of negativity and positivity. On one side, our negative aspects pull us towards them, and on the other hand, our positive aspect, we have to strengthen it. And it is like our negativity works very much like, I think the most simple example of what I want to say is our asana practice. Gravity is pulling us down, and yet all we do, all our asana practices and everything that we do is against that downward pull of gravity. So it is pulling us down, but we are rising above it. Sometimes we also surrender to it, yes. Sometimes the teacher tells us that surrender to it. But the practice basically consists against And without that gravity, I wouldn't know how to practice asana. So if you would ask me to go into space and try to practice asana there, most of the asanas would be a big challenge. Some of them, yes, but most of them would be a big challenge. Very, very difficult, because we work so much with that center of gravity. That is how we should be thankful to our negativity. So negativity is part of our experience. The idea is not to suppress it. The idea is not to dismiss it. The idea is to learn from it and grow beyond it. Use it for our purpose of finding light, of, if we want to evolve tremendous inner strength, then let that negativity be a help, like the downward pull of Mother Earth, known as gravity. That is how I see it. I hope that answers the question. Is it your question? Okay. So that's how I see it. Okay. So let us conclude with the prayer for universal well-being. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः. My humble salutations to you. Thank you very much.